Hey, Jason here from Simply Swider. If your dishwasher isn't drying dishes properly, you're in the right place. In this video, I'll walk you through the 5 most common causes and how to fix them yourself, potentially saving you $150 to $400 in repair costs. The best part, most of these fixes take under 30 minutes and require basic tools you probably already have. Before we get started, if you run into any questions, jump into our Facebook group, links in the description. We've got thousands of people helping each other fix their appliances, and I pop in there daily to help out. Now, here's what's actually happening with most drying issues. And this might surprise you. About 45% of the time, when someone calls me saying their dishwasher won't dry, it's not even broken. I'm talking user error, missing rinse aid, or folks not understanding how modern condensation drying works. Real world breakdown, rinse aid, and loading issues are the big one. High limit thermostats are your next most common culprit. Then heating elements, vent problems, and control boards are actually pretty rare. Here's what's behind the scenes. Modern energy efficiency rules forced manufacturers to dial back wash temperatures and reduce heating power. These machines are way less forgiving than the old ones. Miss one thing like rinse aid, and you're going to think it's broken when it's really just physics working against you. Think in layers here. Usage factors first, safety components second, heating elements third, airflow fourth, and control logic last. A drying failure will always live in one of those layers. We're going to figure out which one with the fastest checks first. So let's start with the most common one, and this is probably 45% of the problems I see. I had this lady call me last month in a panic because her brand new Bosch wasn't drying anything. Turns out she'd been running it for 3 weeks without any rinse aid, and she was opening the door right when the cycle finished. Here's what's actually happening. Modern dishwashers, especially those condensation drying models like Bosch, rely on hot water and chemistry to make water sheet off instead of beading up. Without rinse aid, water just sits there in droplets because of surface tension. And here's the kicker. If you're loading things wrong, like bowls facing up or items touching each other, you're trapping water no matter what. Check your rinse aid dispenser first. That little window should show blue liquid, not be empty and clear. Run a test cycle with the sanitize or extra dry setting selected and make sure that dispenser is full. If your plastics come out wet but everything else is dry, that's actually normal on condensation models. Don't ask me how I know that, but I've had to explain this to customers 100 times. All right, so if rinse aid didn't solve it, we're looking at the high limit thermostat, and this is about 25% of the drying problems I deal with. This little guy is a safety device that sits in series with your heating element. If temperatures get too high, it trips and cuts power to prevent overheating. Here's the thing though, once it trips, it stays tripped until you replace it. I remember this customer who kept opening his dishwasher door mid-cycle to check on things. Well, that temperature swing finally tripped his thermostat, and even though his heating element was perfectly fine, no heat was getting through. You'll find this component clipped to the bottom of the tub, usually accessible behind the toe kick. Important safety note: disconnect power to the dishwasher before testing. Using your multimeter on continuity mode, test across the thermostat terminals. It should read 0 to 1 ohm when functioning properly. If you get infinite resistance or all on your meter, the thermostat has tripped and needs replacement. These things run about 15 to 50 bucks, way cheaper than what most people think they need to replace. Now let's talk about the heating element itself. This accounts for maybe 15% of actual drying failures. Here's what I've learned over the years. Most people jump straight to replacing this thing without checking anything else first. Don't make that mistake. The heating element is that resistive coil at the bottom that heats your water during wash and the air during the dry cycle. When these fail, it's usually from thermal fatigue. All that heating and cooling eventually breaks the internal wire. Sometimes you'll see physical damage too, like when something melts onto it or it gets corroded. Visual inspection first. Look for blisters, cracks, or any obvious deformation on the element. Then test for continuity with your multimeter. A healthy element typically reads between 10 and 30 ohms, though this varies by model. Check your service manual for exact specifications. If you're getting infinite resistance or no continuity, the internal wire has broken and the element needs replacement. Here's where people mess up though. Some newer dishwashers require you to reset the control board after installing a new element. The board goes into error lockout mode and won't send power until you run a specific diagnostic sequence. That's usually a 1, 2, 3 button press pattern, but check your service manual. Next up is vent assembly issues. About 10% of the drying problems I see. This system is responsible for getting that humid air out of the tub so your dishes can actually dry. Some units use a wax motor to open a vent door, others have an electric fan. I had this guy call me because his dishes were coming out hot but soaking wet with crazy condensation all over the door. That's your classic vent problem right there. The wax motor wasn't expanding to open the vent, so all that moisture was just trapped inside. Here's how to check it.
Assembly
Run a
routine without the
normal wash
code,
cycle
otherwise
and
to
watch
release.
during the final dry phase. You should see the vent
Detach
door
the wire
open about
connector
15,
cover.
20 minutes into
Disconnect the
the dry
wire
cycle.
connector.
If it stays closed, test the wax motor with your multimeter. It should read between 600 and 1800 ohms. No reading means the motor has failed and needs replacement. Fan motors should spin freely when you turn them by hand. If the vent's stuck closed or the fan seized up, you're looking at 60 to 150 bucks for a replacement assembly. Finally, we've got control board problems, and these are actually pretty rare, maybe 5% of real drying failures. But here's the thing, this is what everyone wants to blame first because it's the most expensive part. The issue is usually burned solder joints on the heater relay. That heating element draws serious amperage, and over years of cycling, those connections can degrade. I see this most on older Whirlpool and Kenmore models. Here's how you know for sure it's the board.
About
You've
five
tested the
seconds, you're going to
element
see
and
these three
thermostat.
lights
They're
start
both good, but
flashing.
when you
That
check
lets
for
us know that
voltage
we've
at the
gotten
heater
in.
terminals
We're going to
during
hit
the
the first.
dry cycle, you're getting 0 volts. That means the board isn't sending power. Sometimes you can actually see burn marks around the big relay on the circuit board. Control boards run anywhere from 150 to 400 bucks, so you definitely want to be sure before you replace one. Don't be a hero on the voltage testing though. If you're not comfortable working with live 120V, that's when you call someone like me. The rinse aid dispenser. When this thing breaks, you're usually looking at a cracked cap or a clogged assembly. The dispenser itself runs about 30 to 80 bucks depending on your model. Now here's the good news. Most of the time you don't need to replace the whole thing. If it's just empty, fill it up. If the cap is cracked, you can often just replace the cap. But if the whole assembly is leaking or the internal mechanism is gummed up, then yeah, you're replacing the whole unit. This is definitely a DIY repair, just a few screws and maybe a clip to deal with. The high limit thermostat or thermal cutoff. This is probably the best bang for your buck repair in the appliance world. These little safety switches run 15 to 50 bucks and they solve a problem that most people think requires a $400 control board. Here's what you need to know. These are one-time use fuses for the most part. Once they trip, they don't reset. You replace them. Some models have a little reset button you can try first, but don't count on it. The part clips or screws to the bottom of the tub, and you'll need a multimeter to test it properly. If you're comfortable using a meter and crawling under your dishwasher, this is absolutely a DIY repair. The heating element itself typically runs 30 to 150 bucks depending on your dishwasher. Here's what I've learned. Don't just throw a new element at the problem without testing the old one first. I can't tell you how many people have bought elements they didn't need because they skipped the troubleshooting steps. The tricky part with elements is access. Sometimes you need to pull the dishwasher out from the cabinet to get to the rear terminals. And remember what I said about some units needing a reset sequence after element replacement. If you install a new element and it still doesn't heat, check if your model has that diagnostic reset requirement before you assume you got a bad part. The vent assembly, whether it's a wax motor type or an electric fan, you're looking at 60 to 150 bucks for replacement. These aren't terrible to replace if you're handy, but they usually involve separating the door panels, which can be a bit involved. The wax motor types are pretty straightforward. Just a couple of screws and maybe a wire connector. Fan motors might have a few more connections, but nothing crazy. The key is taking pictures before you disconnect anything so you remember how it all goes back together. The main control board, this is where things get expensive. You're looking at 150 to 400 bucks for most models. Here's my decision framework. First, test every other component we've covered. The control board should be your last resort. If your dishwasher is over 8 years old and needs a $300 control board, compare that cost to a new dishwasher. However, if your unit is 5 years old or newer, a control board replacement usually makes financial sense and extends your appliance life significantly. Sometimes you're better off putting that money toward a new unit. But if it's a relatively new machine and you've confirmed the board is bad, it's usually a plug and play replacement. All right, if you're dealing with faulty parts, let's talk about what you're looking at cost wise and which ones make sense to tackle yourself. The good news is most of these repairs are way cheaper than a service call, which is going to run you at least 150 to 200 bucks before they even touch anything. Here's the deal on DIY versus calling a pro. If it's rinse aid, thermostats, or heating elements, you can definitely handle it yourself. But if we're talking control boards or complex voltage testing, that might be where you think about getting some help. Now, before we wrap up, you can see right there on your screen the most common models that run into these drying issues. Maybe you'll spot your own dishwasher there. Here's what I want you to know about brand patterns. Bosch models use condensation drying, so wet plastics are normal. Don't panic about that. Whirlpool, KitchenAid, and Maytag models from the last few years have that software lockout feature I mentioned. They'll disable the heater after a fault and need a reset sequence. GE models, especially the older ones, often have a physical reset button for the thermal cutoff, and LG models seem to have more issues with rinse aid dispensers than other brands. Understanding these patterns can save you a lot of troubleshooting time. That's how you tackle dishwasher drying problems systematically. Here's your quick diagnostic checklist. First, check rinse aid level and loading patterns. Second, test the high limit thermostat with your multimeter. Third, inspect and test the heating element. Fourth, verify vent operation during dry cycle. Finally, test for control board voltage output only after confirming all other components are working. Following this order saves you time and money by catching the most common issues first. Remember, don't open that door too early on condensation drying models and always test your components before replacing them. If you guys know someone who's having appliance troubles, please send them the link to this video or a link to my channel where I have tons of other videos showing how to fix pretty common issues with appliances, sometimes for free or as little cost as possible. It sure beats having a repairman come out and spending several hundred for them to fix it when it could be something so simple. If this helped you get your dishwasher drying again, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know which fix worked for you. Really helps other people with the same problem. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get this out to more folks who need to save some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.